Two claps and Ric Flair. Woo! My name is Lemhouse. I decided to become a teacher because of my father. He was a great inspiration to me. As I was growing up, both my mom and my dad were educators. My dad taught 8th grade social studies for over 30 years, and my mom was an elementary school librarian. So I guess you could say that education has always kind of been in my blood. I grew up with it. But my dad taught 8th grade social studies for a living, which is coincidentally what I teach now. So growing up, not only was I growing up with parents that were educators, I grew up with a father who was very passionate not only about what he taught, but how he taught it. So field trips when I was growing up were to different historical sites. We went to battlegrounds in South Carolina. So he instilled in me not just a passion for education, but a passion for history. So that's what inspired me, I think, most to pursue education. I would describe my teaching style as interactive, engaging, but I think most importantly, I would describe it as meaningful. I lecture very little. Most of the time, my students are creating something. They're engaging in something. Maybe it's a written text. Maybe they're acting something out. They're engaging with one another. But I very rarely do anything that just requires them to sit and take notes. Too often, students tell me they think history is boring. In fact, at open house, at the beginning of the year when I meet students and parents, I always ask my students, do you like history? And the overwhelming majority of my students say no, that they do not like history. And I always make them a promise at open house. I say, tell you what, if you don't like history by the end of the year, I didn't do my job right. I try to make a point to tell my students that I love them every day when they walk out of the classroom. They tend to snicker and kind of laugh a little bit, especially in the beginning when I tell them that I love them. But gradually, they'll start to say it back, which is very meaningful to me, trying to make those connections with my students and my peers. I try to tell my students I love them because I'm not sure how often they hear it. Some of them probably hear it every day, but I'm not sure that they all do. And it also helps me to reaffirm inside myself why I'm doing this job. We have such a great teacher shortage in South Carolina, and so many educators are leaving the classroom. And I think one of the reasons for that is in this job you very quickly lose sight of why you're doing things. So I think it's important for me, but for all educators, to be able to remember why they're doing something. And the why for your good educators should be because you love the kids. To be named York School District 1 Teacher of the Year was very meaningful for me, but I think that even more meaningful was being named York Middle School Teacher of the Year. I was selected as York Middle School Teacher of the Year by people who know me, peers, friends. And I think that was most meaningful to me. Just looking back, District Teacher of the Year is an amazing honor, but York Middle School Teacher of the Year was much more meaningful. I hope that when all is said and done, that my legacy, as most educators I would hope, that our legacies will live on in our students, because that's why, again, the why we get involved in this career, why we become teachers, is to make an impact on children, impact their lives. So I would hope that my legacy would live on in my students. I've had students come back to me and tell me that they decided they wanted to become a teacher because of their experiences in my classroom. I've had students come back and tell me that they want to pursue a career in history because of what they experienced in my classroom. So I hope my legacy will live on with those students that pursue these kind of careers, the students that go into the classroom and become teachers. I hope that when they're deciding what kind of teacher they want to be, that perhaps a little piece of me is brought to their students. And then I'll kind of kind of be able to live on long after I die, not only in my students, but in my students' students. Sometimes I see myself as a parent to my students. I don't necessarily want to get into this on camera, but my wife was recently diagnosed with a disease that could possibly render her infertile, where she cannot have children. So there's a chance that I may never have kids. So I see each and every one of my students as my children, as strange as that might sound. So I hope that one day even the students that don't become teachers might remember how I made them feel, which is hopefully positive. And maybe they take a little piece of me and bring that to their parenting. Even those that don't become teachers, maybe I would hope my legacy would live on in students that decide to have children and remember how I treated them, how I made them feel in my classroom, and they might take little pieces of that and apply that to their lives as a parent when they're parenting and raising their kids.